Hi, Sean Haynes. Quick update on the beef markets in California. 4.5 weight crossbred cattle still holding strong, up another 10 cents this week. Up close cash market for like June, July deliveries at $260 a pound. Plenty profitable for guys out there raising those cattle. Native cattle also remaining strong. Those 5 weight cattle we've seen range from 240 to 288, which is pretty expensive. Pair prices average $2,300 a pair, which is off a little bit from their highs, but anywhere from $1,500 to $3,100 per pair. So it's a pretty big range there. Long range still looks good for beef prices. Consumption trends are coming off a little bit because of the price, but not really that much. Box beef is still good at $305 and $285 for choice and select. Some of the other feed costs coming down this year, because the feed operators for beef feedlots don't go a long range. They're more pen lot kind of contracted. And the other thing that's kind of pushing that price up too is just poor pasture conditions back east, Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, and those areas. A lot of those areas reporting poor to very poor range conditions because of continued drought back there on the last estimate. So for the meantime, cattle prices look to stay high. They kind of seem to be testing that 250, 260 level and backing off again. But as long as they stay up there, we should be pretty good in the profit range for the beef industry. That's all I've got now. Thanks. California milk markets just took a slacking this week, between 15 to 30 cents per hundredweight down across the board for the next 4 to 5 months. A lot of extra milk in the Midwest going to cheese production and powder production at a cheap value, spot prices for that stuff's between $9 to $10 per hundredweight for components. That's flowing into cheap cheese prices. If you take those cheese and powder prices and kind of factor them into the milk price, that gives a milk price on the cheese milk of like $14.32 per hundredweight versus the current price around 16, high 15s. And forage, that winter forage reports are getting off. Winter forage yields them pretty good, so that should provide some good fodder for the guys that are able to get it or produce their own feed. On the bright side, the beef markets are so strong, it's pushing prices up for cull cattle. Cull cattle from 90 cents to $1.12 per pound in the past couple of weeks, which is really good. And beef cross cattle are $400, $420 per head for bull calves. I think you're probably going to see $500 before it's all done, but it's just a guess. Don't hang me on that. Good point in time for dairymen to be looking at where they're calling animals as far as their production cycle goes. With high beef prices like they are, maybe it makes sense to cull a little bit earlier than they were. And take some profit off the table in the form of the beef check versus maybe losing money on producing milk of those cattle for a little bit longer. That's the quick and dirty update on the dairy markets. Thanks. Subjective estimate came out last week, down 3% from last year at 2.5 billion pounds. A little higher than most people expected, and considering what the weather was like and what beef flight time was like. And historically, the subjective's been a little higher than the actual crop coming in, but that being said, looks like a decent crop again at 2.5 billion pounds. Price so far, it's been still pretty early. It's been pretty neutral in the almond market. A little bit of softening, but pretty much staying in that same range. It's been trading that for the past couple of weeks. We do have some comments that we're going to share on the website from Mr. Finn over at the Almond Company. Does a great job kind of walking through the almond report every year. He's an expert in what's moving almond markets around. So I really suggest you guys give it a listen. We'll post it right after this update as well, so you have access to it, and let us know what you think. Thanks. Winter forage harvest is in full swing. Yields look really good so far, at least from the people we're getting reports back from. They were actually able to get in and get yields. Hay prices are still kind of holding up there. Test hay is still at a premium. Good quality hay on downs. Test hay still in the $400 range. Looks like it's going to be that there for the foreseeable future. Grain hays, wheat, and oats, seeing some sales in the 150, 170 range in the field. Corn planting will be full swing here in the next week or two. Usually by June 1st, we're really seeing these guys running. We're a little bit behind this year, but corn planting looks like it'll be in full swing. Tomatoes, planting still in full swing. Guys are trying to get things in next week and this week. Temperatures are looking at brief 96 degrees, which is just a no-go for getting transplants in the ground, and may kind of get to the point where we can't plant anymore. Cherry harvest just started about 7-8 days ago. Early estimates are saying that last year's crop was really down because of weather. Probably 40-50% off of normal. This year's crop looks bountiful to the same size to slightly larger. Strawberries still holding good at the same price per flat, which is 8 containers. $10 to $12 range per flat for standard strawberries, and then organics are still trading $15-16 range. Still a lot of stress on the strawberry side, though. We lost a lot of fields over there. A lot of guys spend $30,000 an acre farming that stuff. So we'll have to kind of see where that all ends up for the industry on that side. So that's quick and dirty on the crops here in the valley at the moment. Thanks. Rates continue to move up, especially after the FOMC met and increased their guidance for their federal funds rate up to the 5.25 range. 30-day money's pushed up another quarter point. Floating rates on ag real estate loans in the 7 to 8 range. Operating loans, again, 7 to 8.5 range. Long-term rates actually come off a little bit from those floating rate size. So you can still get some 10-year stuff in the 6.5 to 7.5 range. A lot of worries there. Jumbo rates and regular home mortgage rates also up a little bit this week, 10 to 20 basis points, or 0.1 to 0.2% on average. It just hasn't really seemed to push a whole lot on housing prices yet. We'll have to wait to see if that happens. One other thing to note, depending if you follow or not, but consumer sentiments really changed in the past 2 to 3 weeks. Some new surveys coming out, where very few people thought that inflation was going to be a continuing problem, and that a recession was going to be very large. About 4 to 5 weeks ago, it was really like tripled, quadrupled, or almost like 80% of the folks think that we're heading into a strong recession with some really bad inflation tied to it. So it's kind of interesting to see that people are feeling this at least, and see what kind of effect that has on the Fed's ability to kind of control it. And maybe they have to put another increase in place. But that's kind of the quick and dirty on markets. Thanks. Yeah, I was reading an article the other day about a deal down in the southeast in the United States with a cattle deal where there was 88,000 head and 78,000 of those cows weren't even in existence, all ghost cattle. Kind of goes to show the importance, not just for banks, but also for operations, to really know your position at all times, right? How many of you guys really know where you're at? Like, if you've got a crop line for $2 or $3 million and there's a schedule for those crop expenses, are you really tracking with it? What's your contingency plan? What's your position, right? With agriculture, it's easy to have a sunny side look all the time, but the real reality of this business is that you're going to lose money at some point in time, and you're going to lose it for a while. And so understanding how much you've got on your balance sheet, what your position is, and your ability to kind of weather that storm is very important. And so just kind of some advice for the week that, sit down at least a couple times a year, go through all those assets, figure out what you can borrow against them, what do you already owe against it, how much do you have left over. That's your cushion. That's what you can live with when times go bad. And if it's very tight, you've got to make some decisions about scaling back your operation, or do you need to bring in some equity from someplace else. But being ahead of that game is very important versus being surprised. And so again, whether you're an investor, a banker, an owner in the operation, really take some time to understand what your position is on a regular basis versus being surprised by it.